I never imagined that a seemingly ordinary afternoon could turn into such a nightmare. July 15, 2024, was just another Monday in Ontario and Wayne counties, New York. But everything changed when the tornado unexpectedly struck. The wind roared like a demon, accompanied by large hailstones pounding on the rooftops like cold, merciless steel bullets. At 4:55 p.m., my phone buzzed with a tornado warning from the National Weather Service, but no one could have been mentally prepared for what was to come. Hailstones the size of coins fell like a rain of swords, smashing into windows, rooftops, and cars. Everything happened so fast, I could only stand and watch in panic. The air around seemed to be swallowed by an eerie silence before the storm struck with ferocity. I could feel the tension in the atmosphere, a threatening quiet before everything erupted. And then suddenly, the storm hit, like an enraged beast. Strong winds toppled trees and power lines, creating a terrifying howl. I stood by the window, witnessing the horrifying sight of a massive tree snapping like a matchstick and crashing onto the road. Power lines were pulled down, sparks flying and illuminating the devastation before my eyes. I felt so small and helpless against the brutal force of nature. As the storm continued to rage, an overwhelming sense of fear consumed me. Looking out the window, I saw the sky turn pitch black, with swirling clouds forming a dark, ominous vortex. The dark funnel seemed to swallow every bit of light, dragging everything into its swirling mass. My heart stopped when I realized the tornado was heading straight toward us. The unthinkable sounds, like 1,000 screams at once, filled the air, as if nature itself was unleashing its wrath. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the scene, trapped in a spiral of fear that I couldn't escape. By 6 p.m., news of the devastation began pouring in from everywhere. Streets turned into battlefields, with over 4,000 people losing power in Ontario and Wayne counties. I heard the desperate cries of neighbors trying to reach rescue services, but there was no phone signal. Darkness enveloped everything, leaving only the dim lights of flashlights held by the brave. Victor, Farmington, and Canandaigua were the hardest hit. People there tried to find shelter, but no one knew what would happen next. Panic gripped everyone, and we wondered if we would survive the night. A separate, dangerous thunderstorm had formed right over Canandaigua at 4:54 p.m. I vividly remember the thunderclap that echoed across the dark sky, followed by lightning cutting through the blackness. The storm moved eastward at a terrifying 40 miles per hour, and it didn't come alone. I could see debris flying through the air, wood and metal shards like invisible blades, ready to slice anyone who hadn't found shelter in time. I felt the icy wind cut through my skin, and in that moment, I knew that anyone outside was facing deadly peril. The sight made me feel more helpless than ever, unable to do anything but watch and pray. A separate, dangerous thunderstorm had formed right over Canandaigua at 4:54 p.m. I vividly remember the thunderclap that echoed across the dark sky, followed by lightning cutting through the blackness. The storm moved eastward at a terrifying 40 miles per hour, and it didn't come alone. I could see debris flying through the air, wood and metal shards like invisible blades, ready to slice anyone who hadn't found shelter in time. I felt the icy wind cut through my skin, and in that moment, I knew that anyone outside was facing deadly peril. The sight made me feel more helpless than ever, unable to do anything but watch and pray. In that horrifying moment, I heard the howling of the wind, the terrifying roar of the approaching tornado. I tried to look outside, but everything was obscured by a wall of rain and wind. But then, through the thick rain, I saw the dark funnel tearing through our neighborhood. That tornado was like a giant beast, moving quickly through Kerrs Park, then slamming down Eastern Avenue, unstoppable. Everything in its path was obliterated, trees, cars, houses, all were swept away. The neighborhood I once knew was now just a chaotic mess of destruction. I didn't know what to do except stand there, feeling the fear surge through every fiber of my being. Witnesses in Canandaigua confirmed what I saw from my window. The tornado had ripped through their neighborhood, leaving behind a scene of utter devastation. I stepped outside, my legs trembling as I took in the sight before me. Trees were downed like fallen soldiers, the neighbor's fence had been torn away, leaving only shattered planks scattered across the ground. The streets, where I used to walk every afternoon, now looked like a battlefield. What the storm left behind was chaos, destruction, and the horror in everyone's eyes. It felt like the heavens had unleashed their fury, and we were just tiny, powerless beings caught in its wrath. Tornado and flash flood warnings continued to be issued across the Rochester area on Monday night. The storm wasn't done yet, it was growing stronger, as if it hadn't released all its rage. The remaining residents were racing against time to find safe shelter. I heard the sound of doors slamming, the shouts of neighbors trying to contact loved ones. Everything was in chaos, and I knew this would be a long, sleepless night for all of us. In the thick darkness, with the wind howling outside, I felt the danger lurking in every moment. Local firefighters were working tirelessly to respond to emergency calls from all over. I witnessed the bravery of a firefighter, drenched in rain, carrying a trapped driver on his shoulders, through a flooded, dangerous street. They walked through the darkness, amid rushing waters, like heroes unafraid of the dangers. Downed power lines created a deadly trap for anyone who dared to step outside. I heard the sizzle of electricity from broken lines, saw sparks flashing in the night, and I knew that the situation was getting increasingly dire. The police and firefighters were doing everything they could to keep the situation under control, but the storm was too powerful, and they were just ordinary people. I saw utility poles crash down, bringing power lines with them, falling onto vehicles trapped on the road. The cars had now become death traps, with those inside having no way out. In the darkness, I saw the faint lights of flashlights, the faint glimmers of hope in the night from the rescue teams. They worked relentlessly, but I knew that this was beyond human capability. All we could do was pray that we would survive the night. Things became even more serious when flash floods began to occur. The streets turned into muddy rivers, sweeping away everything in their path. Houses were flooded, and the survivors had to climb onto rooftops to avoid the rising water. I saw the desperate faces of people crying out for help, but no one could assist them. Screams echoed from all around, in the chaos and terror. I had never seen anything so terrifying. The roads I had walked every day were now submerged, leaving nothing but destruction and pain. By 8:15 p.m., rescue teams were still trying to reach the hardest-hit areas. They worked in dangerous conditions, trying to restore power as quickly as possible, but the devastation was so vast that they were facing unforeseen challenges. I saw the rescuers, exhausted but determined, working to bring people to safety. They walked through debris and fallen power lines, knowing that every step could lead to danger. But they had no other choice, because it was their duty and their courage. However, I knew we would have to deal with the aftermath of this storm for a long time. No one knew how many were injured or the extent of the damage. Reports kept coming in, but the numbers continued to rise. Everyone was advised to find safe shelter and stay away from windows, as they could shatter at any moment. Those outside had to quickly find the nearest shelter because the storm was far from over. I heard the hail pounding on the roof, the wind howling like the cries of tormented souls. We didn't know what would happen next, only that we had to try to survive the night. I stood in the darkness, listening to the wind howling and the hail pounding on the roof. I couldn't believe I was experiencing this, that everything I had ever known was now just chaos and destruction. When everything finally calms down, we will have to face the horrific aftermath left by the storm. But right now, all we can do is pray and hope that we survive. I don't know what will happen in the next few hours, but I know I will never forget this nightmare. This was the most terrifying storm I've ever witnessed, and it has changed our lives forever.